Hello there. Today we're working on the Kindergarten Science Unit 4 Plant and Animal Environments, Lesson 8, Supporting Plants and Animals Portfolio. This portfolio is due in Lesson 8, but it's a really big portfolio that begins in Lesson 6. That's where we'll begin today, so we can look at your directions and help you get the best grade ever. Let's look at your lesson to see how we should begin in Lesson 6. So here I am in Unit 4, Lesson 6. It says, objective. That's what we need to do. In this portfolio, you will think like an engineer about designing a habitat that will protect an animal and meet all of its needs. The key words are habitat, which is a place where plants and animals live, shelter, where animals and humans live and stay safe, and terrarium, a clear container for keeping plants or small animals. All right, so this is a habitat for a lizard, right? You can choose any animal you would like for your habitat, but let's look at some of these examples. Azami gets a pet bearded dragon for her birthday. Her mom tells her she needs to make it a home. She needs to make a habitat. Azami thinks about her lizard's needs. Her lizard needs food, it needs water, it needs air, it needs space, and it needs shelter. So all of these are very important to a pet lizard. Here are some of the things that Azami thought about. She thought about what type of food, what type of water, what type of shelter, and what other needs the lizard might have. You could also build a model of a habitat. That way you could test out if it was going to meet your animal's needs. So here's the word model. A model is a tiny copy of something real. So you don't have to make a full cage or a full habitat. You're just making a model. So here's the engineering design process, and we're going to go through each of these steps together. All right, so first we need to ask ourselves a question. Our question is, what is the problem? Well, Azami's problem is she wants to find out what her pet will need in a terrarium. She must think like an engineer and she must ask questions. So think about your animal, the animal or the pet you'd like to choose, and think about what that pet or animal might need in its habitat. All right, so here's what we're going to do. We're going to ask questions about a habitat that meets an animal's need. We're going to brainstorm ways to make a habitat that meets an animal's needs. We're going to plan and create a habitat that meets an animal's needs. We're going to test your habitat to see how well it meets an animal's needs. And we're going to improve your design for a habitat that meets an animal's needs. So you have a science journal that you are going to use multiple times throughout this portfolio to record your work. All right, so here are some of the things that your journal should include. The questions about a habitat that meets an animal's needs, your ideas that will help keep your animal safe, your design for your habitat, the results of the tests that you do to see if your habitat works, and your thoughts on how to improve the design. Like I said, this is a really big portfolio. Do not try to do all of this work in one day. It will be very overwhelming and you might not feel really good about your work. Take at least 3 days to work on this portfolio slowly. Today, we're talking about lesson 6, and I would suggest when we get to lesson 7, saving that work for the next day. When we get to lesson 8, save that work for another day. That way you feel really good and confident and excited about your animal's habitat. All right, let's go back to your lesson. Okay, so you will write in the worksheets in your science journal and you will turn in separate worksheets as well. Talk to your learning coach and decide how to turn in your work. Don't worry, we're going to go over that today in this lesson as well. All right, we've got another objective, and this is where we're starting today. In this section, you will brainstorm what to put in a habitat so an animal living in it is safe and can live and grow. So here are some new key words. Brainstorm means to come up with a lot of ideas. That's what we're about to do. An ecosystem is a community of all of the living and non-living things where living things meet their needs. A habitat is a place where plants and animals live, and shelter is where animals and humans live and stay safe. Azami needs to design a habitat. It is for her pet lizard. His name is Peanut. She knows her pet needs shelter. So shelter is one of the first things that it needs. Shelter is where animals and humans live and stay safe. So here are the needs of her pet. It's going to be very similar for any pet, right? Pets need food, they need water, they need shelter. Ooh, some animals need warmth. And so if you were thinking of a reptile, you might need warmth like a heat lamp. And then space, right? We need room to move around. So here are some pictures of things that her lizard might need. I would suggest when you are thinking about what pet you want to choose and what your animal might need, that you do an internet search and you look at some examples. So here is a tortoise cage habitat example. Here is a hamster cage example. Here is a snake's cage example. Look, there are those heat lamps. A guinea pig cage habitat and a parrot cage habitat. So I strongly suggest you looking at those examples and seeing which one will meet your animal's needs. All right, let's go back to your lesson. Brainstorming is our second step. So you are going to complete this activity and practice brainstorming ideas about food, water, shelter, and space. Remember, brainstorming is thinking of lots of ideas. So you're going to go over these with your learning coach and talk about each of these questions out loud before you start using your science journal. All right, so now in your science resource book, you're going to see this draw and write worksheet. So right here, this is what it looks like. This is your brainstorming worksheet. So I've also got this in the description if you want to print it out right from the description, but it's also in your lesson. So it says draw your picture on a sheet of paper, take a photo of the picture and attach the picture here. So you can also just draw the picture right here. If you want to make a larger one, that's fine, but you can also just draw your picture right here in this space. At the bottom, you're also going to need to write. So here's an idea for a bunny, if we were doing a bunny habitat. It says, my bunny needs pellets and fresh veggies and fruits for food. It needs clean water every day. It needs hay or straw and a place to sleep at night. So this is an example of what you could write in this bottom section. The one that you complete is going to be blank down here. It's not going to have this typed out sentences. So you are going to write what you think your animal habitat needs. Here's my example. I didn't choose a lizard or a bunny. I chose a parrot. So right here, my little parrot buddy is with me. This is a sun conure. It's a medium-sized parrot, not too big, not too small. And here is the worksheet I printed out. So you can see I wrote my name at the top, Mrs. C, and I wrote today's date. And here is a picture I drew. So this is my first idea. This is what I think my bird might need. It says, my parrot needs seeds and water. It needs a perch to stand on. So I've drawn a cage, I've added a perch, and I've added the water and I've added the seeds. Okay, so this is my brainstorming worksheet. I'm not done yet. Let's go back to your lesson and see what else we need to do. Okay, so we've done our worksheet, but we are not done yet. Here's another objective. In this section, you will plan a habitat for an animal that is safe and has what the animal needs to live and grow. Remember, a habitat is a place where plants and animals live. A plan means the actions to take to do something. And shelter is where animals and humans live and stay safe. All right, so Azami has brainstormed ideas for her habitat. She knows it will need shelter, like logs or rocks to help it hide. She knows it will need food, like insects and plants to eat. And she knows it needs to be warm, so she needs that heat lamp. She used a chart to help her plan her ideas. All right, now we are going to plan a model as well. So we've done our brainstorming, we've written those answers in our science journal, and now we're going to start designing and making a model. So remember to use your science resource book, and you will see on page 15 more steps to help you with this portfolio. All right, so what can we say about our animal's habitat? What's the first step to plan it? You're going to talk about these questions with your learning coach out loud. And then it will be time to plan your own habitat. So remember, what will you need to keep your animal safe? Think about how you'll set up your habitat. And here are some questions or some sentence starters that will help you with your science journal. Now, I don't have a kindergarten resource book like you, so I'm just writing in this notebook, but I set up something similar to the way you will as well. I have my brainstorm step first, right? I have what does a parrot eat? That's the question I've asked myself. How big is a parrot? How big does my habitat need to be? Then I started thinking about what my habitat will need. It will need food, water, a door, right, to keep it safely inside, and a perch for my parrot to sit on. My other steps are going to be plan and create, test, and improve. So here's a little picture I've got to get me started and some of my brainstorming ideas in my science journal. Remember, you have a science journal that you can use that might look a little different, but you're going to include some of the same ideas, some of the same information. So on this section, remember, we are planning. So here is where I use those sentence starters that we just saw in our lesson. I wrote first, I will find supplies. Then I will build a model. Last, I will fix what can make it better. So remember, when you build your first model, you might think, oh no, maybe I need something more. Maybe I need something less. That's how you can improve your model and your animal's habitat. All right, so there are those sentence starters. This is the end of this lesson. So if I were you, I would go ahead and stop here for day one. That's a lot of writing, a lot of brainstorming, a lot of planning. I would go ahead and stop here for day one, and I would come back on day two to go ahead and move on to Unit 4, Lesson 7. So that's where we're going to continue on in our video today. But if I were you, I would not do this all at once. I would save this for another time that you're sitting down to do your work. All right, here's our first objective in Lesson 7. In this section, you will create a habitat for an animal that is safe and has what the animal needs to live and grow. Our keywords are create, which means to make something, habitat, which is a place where plants and animals live, plan, which are the actions to take to do something, and shelter, which is where animals and humans live and stay safe. All right, so Azami needs to create her pet's habitat. She needs to make that model. She has her chart. Remember, she's kept this list of things that she needs. Now you have already brainstormed and planned your habitat. The next step is to create. So you will create your habitat in this section. First, you need to gather your materials and then make your habitat. You can draw your habitat, you can take a picture, you can make a model. So you have a few options for how you create this habitat. Now, just like we looked online and we found some ideas for what habitats look like, I'm a big believer in using what you have. So in my home, I have a lot of pets. So I had a lot of ideas that I could use when I was thinking of things an animal might need. If I were doing something like a gerbil or a hamster cage, I had this wheel. I thought, oh, I might want to include a wheel for exercise, right? So that was something I had here that I considered. I also had a water bottle. A lot of animals will need a water bottle. If you have a bunny, a gerbil, a hamster, a guinea pig, lots of small rodents, they're going to need this water bottle. So that was something else that I thought of because I had it here in my home. If you're doing something like a fish habitat, you might want to include coral or plants, things that can swim around, things that can look at that kind of look like its natural habitat, right? And then since I'm doing a bird, I actually have a small bird cage here. Now it's not big enough for a sun conure. This would be for a tiny bird like a parakeet, but it does have some of the same things included. I've got, excuse me, I've got some bowls for its food, its seeds. I've got a perch in there for it to sit on. So I used what I had around my house to kind of think of ideas of what an animal's habitat might need to include. Remember, you can also look online and you can look up ideas on the internet. So you've got a lot of steps that you can do to do that planning. Now we're going to create. All right, so think about the steps that you need to create your habitat and think of what you can do if something doesn't work, right? Not everything is going to work right the first time, and that's okay. Talk about these questions with your learning coach. Okay, so now we have another worksheet that we're going to print out. It's called the 5-column chart. So right here, this is what it looks like when it is blank. And this lesson also includes some ideas for you. So remember, this is for a bunny. For a bunny, it includes food like pellets, lettuce, celery, strawberries, and blueberries. Water, it says water in a water bottle, changed every day. Environment needs hay, a litter box, and a sturdy plastic bottom. Also some balls and boxes and a soft cushiony bed. For shelter, we will have a cage, 2 different places to hide or enclosures, and it needs to be big enough for the bunny to take 3 or 4 full hops. And then for space, multi-level. That means more than one level. And 32 square feet. They gave an exact measurement. All right, so on mine, I wanted a plan for a bird, right? You're going to print out this worksheet. It's going to be blank and you're going to plan for your animal. So for my bird, the items are a lot different than what the bunny needed, right? I'm going to need seeds. And I realized in my first planning, I kind of only thought of seeds and water for a bird. But a way I could improve that is what if I added something for fresh veggies and fresh fruit as well? I think my bird would like that. My parrot would like that every once in a while. For water, I have a water bowl and I need to clean it daily. It needs fresh water every day. For my environment, I had that perch. I already knew that was a good idea. I know it needs a solid bottom that I can clean. I'm probably going to put some newspaper down there so I can clean that up every day. But then I realized my bird might get kind of bored. I don't have any toys in there. So I thought maybe I should add a toy. For the shelter, it will be in a cage. It needs to be wide enough for the bird to spread its wings. And when I saw that the bunny was going to have a place to sleep in this example in our lesson, I thought maybe my parrot needs a place to sleep too. So I thought adding a nest box with some hay inside would be really nice for my parrot. My space is only going to be one level, and I do want to make sure it's not just wide, but it's also tall for my bird to go up and down. So that is the next worksheet your portfolio will include. So remember, we had our first brainstorming worksheet, and now we have our second one, which is this 5-column chart. You're going to need both of those when you turn this assignment in. Let's go back to our lesson. Okay, so we've made our 5-column chart. You know what your animal is going to need. You're going to fill in that worksheet. Now we need to test our habitat. That means we need to have built something that we can test, right? Or drawn something, planned something out. So in this section, you will test the habitat for an animal that will keep it safe and have what the animal needs to live and grow. A habitat is a place where plants and animals live, and shelter is where animals and humans live and stay safe. All right, so Azami has built a habitat for her pet lizard. She knows it must meet her pet's needs. That is because animals only live in places where their needs are met, so she wants to test it. She uses a checklist. She needs to make sure her lizard has or does the following: eats the food, drinks the water, has shelter, stays warm. So this was the first model that I created for my bird. I don't have a real bird in my house, so I had to draw one back there in the background. I made this using a cardboard box. Like I said, use what you have. I had a cardboard box at home. I put some newspaper in the bottom. I added a door that I can open and close to keep it safe. And I've got a bowl for seeds and a bowl for water. Now, since I've already made this, I've thought of some other ideas that would make it better. Remember, I thought maybe a toy might be nice. And I thought also maybe an extra bowl for fruits and veggies would be nice. So I grabbed an extra bowl. I'm going to put it in the cage too. That's an improvement. We're going to get to that part soon. I also found a little toy that my bird could roll around. Now, really, I'd probably like to hang this from the top if I could, but I didn't have any string. But I've got a little toy so my bird doesn't get bored. I thought that would be a good idea. I also realized that my bird came from a forest, right? So maybe something that would make it look more like its home might be nice. So I added some fake flowers. Remember, if this were a real animal, I'd want to make sure that these fake flowers were safe for my bird. But I added some fake flowers and fake leaves just to kind of make that model or that home a little bit better and a little more like my parrot's natural habitat. So that is my model that I created. And remember, we're going to test and we're going to improve. So I already did a little bit of that. All right, testing is the 5th step in the engineering design process. In this section, you will test your habitat. What worked? What didn't work? We just talked about a little bit of that together. So remember, you're going to use your science resource book and your science journal, and you're going to test out how you can improve it. All right, here are some questions that you can put on a checklist to test your habitat. Is there a food source? Is there a water source? Are there toys? Is there shelter? Is there space? Now we're going to fill out a 3-column chart. So this is another worksheet. You're going to get a blank worksheet like this. There is also an example in your lesson that includes how to fill it out. Now remember, your yes and no answers might not be the same as this example, and they might not be the same as my example either. So you're just going to put a simple X either under the yes column or the no column when you answer these questions. The first question says, does the habitat have the right kind of food for my animal? Can my animal get the food? Yes, mine does. Does it have a water source? Can my animal reach it? Yes, it can. The next question says, does it have shelter? Yes, it does. Now, in my model, I didn't add a nesting box. I didn't have one, but that is something that I already thought of that would also be an improvement. So I'm going to include that as well. Does it have enough space? Yes, there's enough space for my bird. And does it look like my animal's natural habitat? Remember, when I was filling this out, I said, oh no, it doesn't look like my animal's natural habitat. So I added some of those little fake flowers and fake leaves and things to improve the habitat so it looked a little bit more like a forest that my parrot would have lived in the natural environment. All right, so this is another part of your portfolio. You're going to print this out. You're going to fill out the checklist. It's going to help you with those improvements as well. And you are going to turn that in to your teacher as well as part of your portfolio. If I were you, this is the end of lesson 7. I would go ahead and stop now. Building a model takes time. Answering those questions and planning and designing and testing, that takes time. So I would stop again for today and I would save the rest of this portfolio for tomorrow. All right, so in our video, we are going to go ahead and move on to lesson 8. We're in Unit 4, Lesson 8 now. This is where you actually turn in your portfolio. So we have a few more steps before we're able to do that. Here's our new objective. In this section, you will improve a habitat for an animal to make sure all of its needs can be met. Your keywords are environment, which are all the living and non-living things in a place, habitat, a place where plants and animals live, and shelter, where animals and humans live and stay safe. All right, so this is what Azami did to improve her habitat. She said, yes, my lizard is eating the food, but no, he's not drinking the water. Yes, he is hiding under the bark, but the temperature is not warm enough. So she needs to figure out how she can improve her habitat. She reads about heat lamps and she realizes she needs 2. That will make it warmer. She also finds out she can mist water onto her lizard and also on the plants in the tank. That will help her lizard lick up the drops of water to drink. So you're going to try to find the problems in your animal's habitat that you could solve or you could fix. Improving is the 5th step in the engineering design process. What changes will make it better? So here are some questions that you can talk about with your learning coach. What is improving? What are you going to improve? You can have different blank. I can use different blank. So think about these different questions and answer these with your learning coach. All right, look at your model. Look at your drawings and words. See your checklist. How is the environment? How is the shelter? What did you find when you tested your habitat? You have another draw and write worksheet that you are going to print out. You're also going to go ahead and add additional things into your science journal. So let's look at our journal first before we go to that worksheet. I have my create section here, right? This is when we were making our model. I have some good sentences written for my teacher to see. My habitat has food and water. We knew we needed to include that. My habitat has a door to keep my parrot safe. That's something I knew from the beginning that was needed. And my habitat is clean. I want to make sure that that habitat is nice and clean for my parrot every day. When I tested it, I answered some questions as well. I said, yes, my habitat has space, but my habitat needs toys. It has space, but it's kind of boring space. I also think my parrot would like a nest. I think it would like some additional shelter. So when I thought of those things that needed to be fixed, I thought, how can I improve it? What can I do? I can improve my habitat with a fresh food bowl. Remember, I didn't just want my parrot to have seeds. My parrot's need for shelter will be better with a nest box. And I feel good about improving my habitat for my pet. So those are also some items that I completed in my science journal. And now I'm also going to use the second draw and write worksheet. Now, on the example, it says draw your picture on a sheet of paper and take a photo of the picture, attach it here. Both examples that are in the lesson have this little picture here showing you that you can attach a picture. I made a blank file for you that has an open space like this, like your first brainstorming worksheet. I made one for your improvement that is also blank. So if you look in the description of this video, you can print that out and then you can draw your picture right on this worksheet. So after you write or you draw your picture, you're going to write a few sentences about how you improved your animal's habitat. It says, for the bunny, my bunny needs a different source of water. A water bottle will be better than a water bowl. I think my habitat could use a second level, so my bunny has more space to move. So those are some improvements that could be made to a bunny habitat. Since I did a parrot, my improvements are different. Here's my new drawing. Look at that cage. It looks so different, right? I think it looks so much better. I added that nest box. I added that fresh food bowl. I added a toy up here. And I made sure that my parrot had all of the things it needed to be happy. Here are my new sentences about my improvements. My parrot needs a bowl for fresh food. My parrot needs a place to sleep. So that's talking about the fresh food bowl and the nesting box. I also added toys. So this worksheet is also going to be turned in to your teacher in your final portfolio. All right, let's go back to your lesson. Think like an engineer and create a habitat. You created a habitat, it met an animal's needs. Now it's time to reflect. Think about all that you did. All right, so you're going to use your science resource book to complete your reflection and think about everything that you did in this engineering design process. Here are some things that you can write about in your science journal as you reflect. It says use these sentence starters for help. You could write a sentence like, I learned that animals are happiest when they have food, water, and shelter. My portfolio project was to make a habitat for a pet tortoise or whatever animal you chose. You can talk about the most difficult part and you can talk about when you were thinking like an engineer. Write all of these answers in your science journal. All right, so here's everything you're going to want to include when you turn this portfolio in. Remember, this is not something you want to do all in one day. You're going to turn in the first draw and write worksheet and also a page from your science journal with your brainstorming. You're going to turn in your 5-column chart worksheet. You're also going to turn in your create section from your science journal. You're going to take pictures of your habitat or habitat model to share with your teacher. Remember, that model might be a drawn model. That's okay. It doesn't have to be a 3-dimensional model like I did, but it's a lot of fun to build things like that, so I think you should try. You're also going to take your science journal test. You're also going to include that 3-column chart worksheet. You're also going to include that second draw and write printout. Now remember, that one is the improvement one. That is where you change your design, where you improve it and make it better. And you're going to write about those improvements in your science journal and turn that in as well. It looks and sounds like a lot, and it is. That is why I do not think you should do this all in one day. I think you should spread it out over at least 3 days. If you have any additional questions, remember I've got some of those worksheets down in the description for you, so definitely grab those and don't be afraid to ask your homeroom teacher for more information. I know if you take your time and you do each step in this engineering process slowly and carefully, you will get an amazing grade on this portfolio. If you need any additional information, remember you do have this rubric that you can refer to as well. It talks about each section and each design process and what you should do. So it talks about what you can do when you're asking questions, when you're brainstorming, when you're designing, when you're creating, when you're testing, and when you're improving. That looks like a lot of work, right? And it definitely is. That's why you should complete it just a little bit at a time until it is 100% ready and then turn it into your teacher. All right, guys, it was wonderful helping you today with your science portfolio. I hope you get an amazing grade, and I will see you next time. Goodbye.